Hello everyone, Sandi here. Welcome back to this deep dive study series of the Forest of Enchantment Tarot. Now, I owe you all an apology. I completely kind of dropped the ball on this study series. Dropped the ball. I have had a difficult few weeks and basically haven't been able or had the time or the energy or, even the will to pick up this study series again until now. I am recovering from a cold at the moment though, so please excuse any coughing or any throat clearing. I will try to edit them all out, but I might miss a few. So I wanted to start out this episode, which is episode 9, by the way, by showing you the new home that I have for my Forest of Enchantment deck. So this is a gorgeous pouch that Krista from Crochet Witch Tarot sent to me as a gift. And I just feel, at first I thought I was going to house my Green Witch Tarot in here, but I felt like this is more of a cold green and this is more of a warm green, so I thought there's lots of greens and blues in here as well, so I thought these went so well together. So this is now the new home for my deck, and I'm so happy about it. It's so gorgeous. And Krista sells these wonderful bags over in her Etsy shop, Crochet Witch Wares. I will link the shop down below for you so that you can have a look, see if there's anything there that you want. For now though, I am going to put my deck away and then we will dive into the 7 and 8s for today's episode. So, we've had a bit of a break and I almost feel like I ought to go back and rewatch all of my episodes just so that I would, because it feels like I'm starting from scratch again with this deck now. Not really, but it's been such a long time since I did this now. I'm feeling a little bit out of the loop, but we are going to get started with the general write-up for the 7s, and then we're going to compare the artwork between this and the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and I'm using the Tarot of A.E. Waite for my RWS because the little white book that comes with it is written by Rachel Pollack. And oh yes, I'm going to link down below the playlist for this series as well. In case you've stumbled upon this episode as your first one, I highly recommend going back and starting the series from the beginning, because we start with the majors and work our way through the deck. And at the moment we are now going through, like I said, the 7s and the 8s. Okay, so the 7s. Now that you're all rested up from the 6s, the 7s present you with some problems to solve. Each 7 holds a predicament and a choice to take action or not yet. The 7 of Spells says, stand your ground. The 7 of Visions says, distill your desires. The 7 of Challenges says, there is danger afoot. The 7 of Boons says, your options are increasing. All right, so we are starting with the Seven of Spells, which in the Rider-Waite-Smith would be the Seven of Wands. So I'm looking at the artwork here. I'm trying to not get this glare in the book, but anyway, so we can see here if we start out with I can't remember if I usually start out with the RWS or the. I think anyway, let's start out with this. So here we have a man standing on a hill, seemingly defending himself against all of these other wands sticking up here, presumably being held by other people. So it looks like he is defending his ground, his position, that he's up on higher ground, so he's above the other people who are down there trying to get at him. Comparatively, if we look at this card here, the Seven of Spells, we have a dragon up on a tree stump, and he or she, I presume it's a dragon, or is it a wyvern? I've done this so many times before in this in this series. I call a wyvern a dragon, so I'm going to assume that this is a wyvern. Actually, it says wyvern here, so I'll just go with it. So this wyvern is standing on this tree stump, and we've got these angry looking gnomes, gnomes I would say, with sticks poking at it. It almost looks like a lynch mob, you know. So that's very interesting. Let's have a look at and see what the guidebook says. Okay, so our Our friend, the young wyvern, is growing fast. No longer a hatchling, he is able to go out at night by himself, and tonight he's been ambushed by a mob of torch-wielding gnomes. Gnomes are earth elementals, which means they can get a bit stuck in their ways and in their attitudes. Things that are unfamiliar or different seem threatening to them. The gnomes want to upset the wyvern and frighten it into leaving their forest. The wyvern is in a position of advantage above the gnomes, but he can't easily flee. He isn't breathing fire at the moment, but he could, and he might. The situation does not bode well. The gnomes represent lesser forces that may be rallied against you. Don't stoop to their level and do not return fire. There's a very good chance that their ideas are misinformed. Wait for tempers to cool, then find common ground and work towards peace. Meaning at a glance, holding your own under attack. Trivial problems add up, misunderstandings, defensiveness. A closer look. As you can see, there is not much diversity among the gnomes, which is one of the reasons they are suspicious of non-gnomes. All right, that was interesting. So let's put this card into focus and read what Rachel has written about the Seven of Wands. The energy of wands shift back to individual action, as if the way of fire has tried a communal approach but really wants to operate alone, or even as one against the world. We see a young man on a hilltop wearing mismatched shoes, as if he got dressed in a hurry to go out and battle. What? What lurks below remains hidden, though most see it as an implied group of attackers, and the man as a courageous defender. Some of the Wands figures may remind us of the survivalist approach to planetary crisis. Expect society to collapse for one reason or another, and prepare by creating a sanctuary far from cities where they will bring their families and fight off anyone who encroaches on their territory. Extreme? Yes, but there is something in that battling attitude that comes out in the Seven of Wands. Divinatory meanings: courage, heroism, isolation, a sense of one against the world. Okay, so first of all, I know I've noticed the mismatched shoes before, but I keep forgetting about it. So whenever I notice it, it's really fun because whenever I notice it, I take it into account into the reading. So yeah, very similar interpretations here. Anyway, I didn't feel like. I mean, fair enough. We do have some differences here. We have the Seven of Spells in the Forest of Enchantment hints at intolerance against people who are, or creatures who are different than yourself. It also hints at, not reciprocating with fire. It talks about misunderstandings and defensiveness, and it talks about not stooping to somebody else's level. So it's more talking about being under attack and dealing with that in a respectful and grown-up way. Whereas the Seven of Wands in the RWS here speaks about it takes into account the battle readiness and that you are defending yourself and also prepared, that you're prepared like some kind of survivalist for the worst, that you are battle ready basically, and also the mismatched shoes, kind of signifying that you're rushing into this without really thinking too much about it. Like, if because of the mismatched shoes, you get the feeling like she says here in the guidebook, that he's rushed out of his house to defend himself, instead of sitting down and making up a plan and then going outside to meet his foes. So that's an interesting difference between these two, and I can definitely see how you would read them differently as well, if need be. So let's move along to the Seven of Visions, which is the same as the Seven of Cups. Okay, so here we've got a person standing with their backs against us, and they're looking up into the sky and seeing all of these cups filled with treasures and monsters and various creatures and symbols. And you get the feeling of, because they're up in the clouds, like they've got lots of different opportunities, lots of different things to choose from. And so, let's have a look at the Seven of Visions in the guidebook here. We see what looks like a little like water mirror, or like a little pool, like some kind of, maybe a bird bath. it's like surrounded with moss here around the edge, and in the water we can see as through magic different visions appearing in the water. And we see here a boar and a harp. Let me use a harp, and we see some kind of flower here, and a lady, and a house or a little cottage. And down here we've got a crown or a diadem, and here we have some kind of crystals, maybe looks like emeralds perhaps. And around the edge here we've got some etchings as well. So let's read. 7 of Visions. Carefully descending the weathered stone stairs glittering with dew, you approach the stone fountain at the bottom of the grotto. Your trials in the forest have made you doubt your course, and you seek guidance from the ancient gazing bowl. At first you can see only your reflection on the dark surface, but as you breathe upon the water, images begin to appear, fragments of visions swirling and shifting. The gazing bowl is telling you that many futures are possible, but nothing has settled yet. This card is also an admonition against escaping into delusion. Your lack of direction may be the result of preferring fantasy to reality. If seeking divinatory guidance only makes you more confused, stop asking for now. Badgering the oracle will only muddy the waters. If you ask too many questions, you will get too many answers. Meaning at a glance, confusion, a riddle with no answer, wait for clarity, do not act yet. Closer look. All of the visions in the gazing bowl are things that you've seen in the forest. Can you find them in the other cards? Oh, that's so cool. I wonder if I can remember where I've seen them all. I know I've seen the harp with a male figure, an elf. The boar, I think, was part of the Emperor card. Oh, that's really funny. I love that. Okay, so let's read from the other card. Seven of Cups. In the 6 we saw the attraction and perhaps the risk of looking back to a vision of the past that never really was. Ironically, the way forward does not lie in sober realism but more fantasy. A figure stands in silhouette with his back to us and his feet unseen. In other words, he is ungrounded, undefined, and seemingly unattached to reality. He stares at 7 cups that appear in the clouds, each one containing some bizarre wonder out of a dream or a fairy tale. A floating head, a cloaked radiant figure, treasures, a dragon, but none are real. As with the 4, some take a moralistic approach to the card. He should get his head out of the clouds and get to work creating the world he wants. But such puritanism misses the point. The first step to serious change begins with the ability and the freedom to imagine something different. When we can imagine, we can discover possibilities. Divinatory meanings, fantasies, visions, the ability to imagine new possibilities. Wow, okay, so we've got 2 very different approaches here. So in the 7 of Visions, they talk about confusion and riddles without an answer, and that you have a lack of direction, and preferring fantasy to reality, that you're escaping from your your what's the word? That you're escaping from your responsibilities. But it's like, and it's like telling you that you should stop asking for answers and like just go on and do something more realistic for a while, basically. And that you should wait for clarity. Whereas this card instead, Rachel Pollack is writing about how it's good for you to daydream a little bit. You need to have fantasies and visions, and you need to try and imagine new possibilities, and that you should explore this fancy. It's quite a funny difference, actually. And I feel like these kind of complement each other. Like, of course, you can read that in this card as well if you want. You can read them both ways. It's just so fun that the two guidebooks had completely different approaches. That was really interesting, actually. Yeah. All right. 7 of challenges. So we've got 7 of swords here. All right. So this card, I'm still kind of a bit unsure about what is actually happening here. So we see this man who's apparently sneaking away with 5 swords, and he's leaving 2 swords behind. And it looks like there's some kind of circus tents or something in the back here, or maybe like tournament tents, like from the medieval time where they had tournaments, or maybe war time, and they were like, I don't know, because it also looks a bit like there's a battle in the background here. I've only just noticed that. Or no, maybe it's a campfire. It actually looks like there's people sitting around a campfire now when I'm looking more closely. So anyway, it's like he's stealing these swords and he's like tiptoeing away not to be noticed. But he's holding the swords in a very awkward way. In a way. Yeah, this card confuses me a bit. And looking at the 7 of challenges, we have something fairly similar here, but instead of one person stealing, we have 3 foxes who have gotten into somebody's campsite, and they are running off with all of their extra belongings. So we've got a pouch of valuables here, we've got a cup, and harpsichord? No, that's not what they're called. They're called... Oh, come on. What are they called in English? Dragspel in Swedish, in case you're wondering, but I'm gonna put the name here. So yeah, this is a really pretty card, by the way. Alright, so let's read. 7 of challenges. The travellers, having had their supper and smored the fire, are cosily tucked into their vardo for the night. They came far into the deep forest, so they'd have no fear of intruders. It will be good to get a peaceful night's sleep. The scenario is exactly what this skulk of foxes loves best. The pleasure of stealing enhanced by the pleasure of making fools of unwary innocents. They step lightly through the clearing, slyly confident in their sneaky skills. These are foxes of the Enchanted Forest, and the things they steal are not the things normal foxes would take, such as food or livestock. You never know what one of these foxes is going to want, whether they can actually use it or not. When these vulpine bandits appear in a reading, something is going on behind your back. Someone is trying to get away with something by cheating or outright theft. It may be in an arena where you feel you are safe, so you've relaxed your vigilance. Or perhaps you are the one whose actions don't bear close scrutiny. Have you violated your own ethical values? Meaning at a glance: sneakiness, secrets, strategy, using your wits to get what you want, a lapse of ethics. A closer look, the fox with the teacup has been looking for this china pattern ever since he stole its matching saucer. Oh, that's so funny. That's really funny. A funny little detail. Oops. All right. So the 7 of Swords. Again, we find a figure looking backwards at the same time that he moves forwards. A man who appears pleased with himself, tiptoes away from a tent, carrying 5 swords over his shoulders. 2 remain standing as if he cannot take them all, but he doesn't seem to mind. We might think of him as the great hero of mythologies the world over, the trickster thief. He suggests to us an approach to crises that tackles nothing head on, but rather finds creative ways around opposition. In radical times, such figures can become folk heroes, like Robin Hood or the bank robbers of 1930s. At the same time, such attitudes do not really solve problems or create anything new. This is why he looks backward, and why, as pleased with himself as he is, he has not really changed the situation. He raises questions of effectiveness, but also ethics, for it is your swords that he's stealing. For if it is your swords that he is stealing, he can become destructive. Divinatory meanings: someone sly and tricky who acts on his own. Okay, so again we get a bit of a varied approach to the 7 of Swords and the 7 of Challenges. So we've got a main focus here on a lapse of ethics. We've got stealing, being sly and sneaky, taking something that isn't yours, or something happening behind your back. Whereas in this little guidebook by Rachel, we have mentions of Robin Hood and the bank robbers of the 1930s, like a more innovative way of dealing with a problem by being a bit sneaky and not facing things head on, and suggesting that might sometimes be the way to deal with things, but it comes with the warning of that action actually not ending up changing a situation, just maybe adding to the fire. Let's see. It also says here, like, it feels like this description in the Forest of Enchantment is suggesting that something is happening behind your back, whereas here we don't really get that approach at all. But I do like that it's picked up on the fact that the man is moving forwards and he's sneaking away, but he's looking backwards, as if either to check that nobody's noticing him, or maybe to suggest some kind of regretfulness. I don't know. But yeah, very interesting. All right, so we have 7 left, and that is the 7 of Pentacles, or the 7 of Boons. So, 7 of Pentacles. We've got here a person leaning against their, I don't know if it's a spade or a rake. I can't really see the end of it. Oops. And they seem to be surveying or looking at these pentacles here. And you get the feeling that this is their crop, that they've harvested, or that they are just watching them grow. Like he's assessing the matter or looking at the progress of their work, the fruit of their labor, maybe. At least that's always how I've seen this card. And in the 7 of Boons, it's very interesting. A very different picture here. We've got what looks like a huge wide tree trunk with lots of different doors. Well, 7 I would assume. And each door has this little sigil on them carved in. And each door is also a different color, which I find really interesting. It's such a different picture from this, so it excites me when I find a card that has a completely different take on how to represent a card in the tarot. So let's read about it, shall we? In the Enchanted Forest, there is always a door when you need one, eventually. The forest decides when your need is great enough to warrant a portal, and then sometimes it gives you more than one. The next stage of your journey is determined by the door you choose, so take your time. Don't rush through the first door that appears before you. Remember, this is a magical place, and things are not always as they seem. Sit down and observe the scene for a while to judge its permanence. You don't want to step through a door into nothingness. This card is about patience as much as it is about choice. As you may have noticed, the suit of Boons doesn't go in much for speed or impetuosity. It's about practical responses to practical problems, even in the realm of enchantment. If you don't know what to do yet, don't do anything. Simple as that. Remember, once you choose a door, all the other doors disappear. Meaning at a glance, patience, timeliness, waiting for obvious directions, recognizing the best option. A closer look. Each door bears a different symbol, placed there by magic. Which one calls to you? All right. So let's compare that to the 7 of Pentacles. As if the 6 resolves the crisis triggered by the 4 and 5, we see a much simpler image with the theme of work. The suit will now move steadily towards its goal of a new and functioning society. The first stage of the process is the willingness to work for it. The pentacle offered in the ace has become a seed buried in the ground, and now a bush with 7 pentacles grows lushly as the gardener looks on. The magic from above has truly taken root below. More even than with most other cards, we need to ask the questioner or ourselves about his expression. Does he appear satisfied with what he has done? Is he now taking a well-earned rest? Or does he stare dismayed at everything he still needs to do? The answer determines how we understand the message, either in a personal reading or on the larger scale of world change. Divinatory meanings, hard work that makes something grow, magic taking root in daily life. Wow, so we've got completely different even meanings here as well. I was sitting here wondering, when is it going to tie together and it actually means the same thing? But it doesn't. It ends up being two different ways of reading the Seven of Pentacles or Seven of Boons, which is so interesting. Really. So, Seven of Boons in the Forest of Enchantment, we've got all of these doors, and it's talking about how we need to not rush for a decision. We need to sit down and take our time before we choose our path, before we choose how to continue and proceed in our journey, and to deliberate a little bit and feel in our heart of hearts what it is that we want. So in a way, we can see that also in this card, the waiting, the deliberating, the thinking things over. But in this card and in this guidebook, we are more talking about how we are assessing what we've been doing. We are, kind of judging our progress, the seed that has been planted and the fruit that is now growing. Are we, and it's asking us to look at the person in the card and decide, is he or she or they pleased with what they've achieved, or are they only looking at things that they still need to do? The guidebook is talking about how we need to, how it's magic taking root in daily life, how we've planted something from above and it's taking root below, and it signifies hard work and something growing. Whereas in this card, it's more about just the choice, taking the time to make a choice. So really, I would have a hard time reading this meaning in this card. So depending on which deck you're using, you might be getting completely different readings, even if you're pulling the same card, which is so exciting, really, because it just means your decks are going to have different personalities, and you're going to get different ways of approaching a situation depending on which deck you've chosen. So, I mean, that's really interesting. And yeah, very interesting how these two cards have taken such different approaches to the same card in a tarot system, I mean. What do you think about this? Do you think should this deck have followed the Rider-Waite-Smith? Do you think that it's... Because it feels like this card has the ability of also being read like this, taking the time to, assess the situation and then making a decision on whether to harvest now or later, for example, or what to do with the harvest. Are you going to store it for winter, or are you going to sell it for profit? Stuff like that. So, super interesting. Yeah, and I'm sure there's different ways of reading these doors as well that I haven't talked about now. Very, very cool. All right, so now we're moving on to the eights. The eight represent limitations, interference, a hard task, or a difficult life lesson. Often the card doesn't show an actual problem. Rather, it shows ways you might react to the problem. Each of the eights shows a response to obstacles. The Eight of Spells says, act swiftly. The Eight of Vision says, awaken from illusion. The Eight of Challenges says, think, don't struggle. The Eight of Boons says, persevere to attain mastery. Alright, so we've got the Eight of Spells, which corresponds to the Eight of Wands. And in the RWS, we see the traditional wands, 8 wands that are shooting diagonally across the card. And depending on how you read it, the wands can either be going upwards or coming down. I'm not quite sure how I read it. I think for some reason I see them. I think it's different for each reading how I see them actually, if I see them going upwards or downwards. But anyway, so a very simple card with the 8 wands, and then there's this luscious landscape in the back here, which kind of makes me think of Toscana in Italy, or Tuscany is what it's called in English. So yeah, Tuscany in England, in Italy. But anyway, the 8 of Spells. So here we've got 8 owls, barn owls. Well, mostly barn owls by the looks of it. This guy looks a bit different. But anyway, 8 owls swooshing towards you in the card. And it's, you know, there's these swirls and sparkles all around them, and there's feathers flying, signifying that they are flying really fast towards you. So, 8 of Spells. A parliament of owls incoming, zooming through the forest with sureness of purpose. They carry messages of magical portent. Some travel at the bidding of the enchanter himself, but anyone can ask an owl to carry a message. The owl will decide if it wants to or not. If you have been sent an owl before and didn't heed its message, you may be left to your own devices from then on. Owls do not carry trivial missives. Crows are happy to do that, so when you see an owl headed your way, straighten up and prepare to receive it with respect. The appearance of the owls in a reading signifies news is on the way. It also means that energy is increasing for any endeavor to which you apply your full will and intention. Things are speeding up and moving it toward a positive conclusion or reward. Watch the skies. Meaning at a glance, news and incoming messages, swiftness, aiming toward a goal. A closer look. This parliament has 2 tawny owls, 1 little owl, 1 short-eared owl, and 2 barn owls. The formal name for the short-eared owl is Asio flammeus, which is also how you summon an owl. Oh, I love that. I love that they are actually letting us know which owls are depicted here, because that's something that actually bugs me in most oracle decks and stuff like that, where it's just, it can be any type of owl and it's just called an owl, you know? So yeah. Cool. Let's read from the other guidebook for the 8 of Wands. Okay. Can you see the other card? Yeah. The 8 of Wands is possibly the most mysterious card in the Rider Tarot. This is because it's the only card where no people or animals appear. The aces show a hand, and the Three of Swords the icon of a heart, but here the 8 wands fly through the air all by themselves. Judging by the placement of the leaves, they point downwards as if launched by some heavenly force. And now about to come to earth. Okay. I suppose that would work, although if they're being launched really hard, then the wind resistance should indicate that they're going upwards, because the leaves would be blown downwards, if you understand what I mean. All right, back to the description. They move in parallel, suggesting an alignment of energies. But whose energies? Who has launched them, and for what purpose? Maybe they hint at a return to group effort, problems solved when people are able to work in harmony, and maybe the lack of figures indicates people who act anonymously, seeking only the common good. Or maybe its strangeness hints at something more radical, the idea of invisible forces coming to our aid. We see their effects, but not the forces themselves. Divinatory meanings: action, movement, people joining together for a common good, higher forces acting in the world. That's so interesting. We've got 2 very different approaches again. So, in the 8 of Spells, we have the indication of messages, new news, and you know, some kind of some kind of you know, energy coming towards you, and swiftness is what they're talking about as well, and aiming towards a goal. And in this card here, we're talking about energies aligning and invisible forces, or maybe heavenly forces, which is, I would say, invisible as well. But we also have, you know, talking about launching these energies. So how would you read this? You would read it as somebody working with or against you, maybe. I've always thought of this card as momentum, you know, as in riding the momentum. There's a forward moving motion, and you need to go with the flow, or go with the motion, basically. Here we also have, like she says here, a lack of figures, whereas in this card we have 8 living creatures. So yeah, very different cards again. They both speak to, you know, a motion, like a swiftness or a motion forwards or something. But in this case, it's, you know, a question of, are they going upwards or downwards? And in this case, it's just that it's coming towards you, rushing towards you. So yeah, super, super interesting. All right, 8 of Visions. We have the 8 of Cups. So, again, very different approaches here. We have a lone figure with their backs against us, walking away from these 8 cups that are neatly stacked on top of each other here. It's in the middle of the night, and we get the feeling that they are leaving something behind, that they've taken a difficult decision, a decision of big emotions, and that they've basically decided that they're going to risk leaving this thing behind because it's maybe not serving them anymore. Maybe they've drunk all of the cups and they are now moving on to find different cups to drink from. I don't know. But anyway, this has always been one of my favorite cards. I don't know if it's about the composition about it, but most decks, when they depict this card, they use the most luscious colors, and there's something about the freedom of just leaving something behind that appeals to me. I don't know what that says about me though. Anyway, in this card here, we have I assume 8 women who seem to be wandering about. They seem lost in the mist in the forest, and it feels like the mist is leading them astray, almost like they are being they're straying from the path in some way, and they can't find each other or see each other anymore. Like they traveled together, and now all of a sudden they are all seeing different visions, and they are straying away from each other. Which, I mean, I would read these 2 cards so differently. So let's see what the guidebooks say. 8 of Visions. Under the weeping willows runs a sluggish, vaporous stream. Here ghostly wraiths of women who died for love drift in a mesmeric dance. Ooh, okay. So each is in her own world of sadness and self-pity. They may not be aware of each other, or if they are, they don't care. They are, however, aware of you. They pluck at your sleeve and implore you with their watery eyes to join them in their sorrow. These woeful spirits have no free will anymore, but you do. You can escape their lost and empty fate, though perhaps not on your own. This card speaks of depression and disenchantment with life. Expressive grief is much healthier than quietly retreating into a world that denies all joy as well. It can be hard to begin again when your spirits are so low. Don't surround yourself with pessimistic companions. Seek wise guidance from those who have found their way out of the murk. Meaning at a glance, withdrawing from life, extended solitude, the dangers of depression, being swamped by grief. A closer look. If you stray into a greenish mist swirling close to the ground, run away with all possible speed. This mist never lifts, and it has a narcotic effect. Alright, that's so interesting and very different to how I usually view the 8 of Cups. But it's still very intriguing. Alright, so let's read the 8 of Cups from this guidebook. As with the 8 of Wands, we see a turning point. A figure walks away from 8 cups stacked neatly in 2 rows. With the moon shining down benignly, he seems to start out on a journey or a quest. Traditionally, the card means to walk away from something because we know the time has come. Even if nothing has collapsed, we might compare it to the 5. Here, no cups lie spilled on the ground. He just leaves. Then what makes this a turning point? Notice the odd way the artist has arranged the cups, with the gap in the top row. They imply that something is missing. Some vital piece. The suit begins with a too easy optimism. The idea that good intentions alone can remake the world. The collapse of the 5s give the collapse of the 5 gives way to nostalgia in the 6. The 7 then inspired us to imagine something new. And now the 8 searches to discover the true power that will create a new world. Ooh, okay. So divinatory meanings, leaving something behind, a quest for what is missing. All right, so we've got completely different interpretations here again. So in this card, we are talking about sadness and depression and warnings against, lurking in the shadows and away from people for too long, and that it's warning against withdrawing and solitude and being swamped with grief, like it says here. It is basically just warning you about moving along, running away from, or trying to fight this dreariness and depression, or that to maybe express the grief is the way out of the grief. Whereas here we don't really talk about grief. We don't see, like she writes in the guidebook, that all the cups are standing up. There's just something that is missing. So we are going on a search for the part that is missing. I feel like this is a very optimistic card for me, and it always has been. Basically, going for what we want, going for a search of what we want, and leaving something behind in the process. And with the benevolent moon, as she describes it, it feels like the elements or the moon, the powers, the energies are in your are behind you. They are supporting you in your decision. So it's like two very different cards and two very different ways of reading this card. I suppose this can also, you can also read this as if you are, either a warning, but also as a confirmation that you are working through some things and that you should take it easy and be easy on yourself, and that you should try to move along from these things. I don't know. It's very, very interesting. And obviously the way you read it will depend on the situation, the question, the spread position, and the surrounding cards. But still, so interesting that we have such different interpretations. All right, 8 of Challenges and the 8 of Swords. So we definitely see some similarities between these two cards straight away. So starting out with the RWS, we have a person wrapped up in some kind of bindings, surrounded by these 8 swords, and they have a blindfold over their eyes. In the background we see some kind of town with some kind of castle-looking roofs, and then we see like what looks like either a puddle or like a dried out lake that they're standing in. Very, very interesting card overall. And in the 8 of Challenges, we see this person standing in the middle of a bunch of thorns, spiraling around her. It looks like she's protecting her eyes, or don't want to see the danger ahead, perhaps. She's got cuts all over her arms, and her clothing is ripped, and it looks like she's got no way out. So, in the guidebook it says, a woman is surrounded by vicious thorns that suddenly grow and engulf her. She has scratches and there is blood on her clothes, but she is not badly wounded as yet. The scratches and tears in her garment are from her initial frenzied struggle to get free from the trap. She doesn't know which way to turn. Every obvious direction is dangerous. She knows she can't stay there and be destroyed by the magical thorns. With no ability to think things through, she falls into denial, refusing to look at the situation or find a solution to her entrapment. This card signifies a situation that should not be endured, but you may find it hard to imagine anything better. Panicking and flailing around will only do more damage. Use your head to analyze the challenge and overcome it. There is a way out. It is time to open your eyes, let go of denial, and banish the idea that you are a helpless victim. Meaning at a glance: feeling trapped, denial, passivity, victimization, lack of direction. A closer look: the magical thorns appear in several other challenges cards, some in unexpected places. See how many you can find. Ooh, I love that. All right, let's head straight into the Eight of Swords, description by Rachel Pollack. All right, in the Eight of Wands and the Eight of Cups, we saw hints of a breakthrough. Here we see what looks like the opposite: a literal bondage that implies helplessness, confusion, ignorance. In the two, the woman chooses her blindfold, for if she wanted, she could set down the swords and take it off. But you can't tie yourself up like this woman. Someone else has to do it. Behind her we see a grey castle, symbol maybe of the power of the old world that tries to stop the new from emerging. But look, the ropes do not go around her legs, and the swords do not block her way, and there is no one there from the castle. What stops her is the blindfold, confusion and fear. As with the two, here there is another possibility. Maybe our intellect cannot see a clear path. Maybe all we can do is move forward blindly, trusting our instincts. Divinatory meanings: ignorance, confusion, possibly imposed by others. Move forward one step at a time. Okay, so we have similarities between these two cards, definitely. We have the seeming entrapment, and we have a woman presenting person seemingly trapped by her own mind or her unwillingness to try to get out of the situation. But it feels like in this description here, we have the keywords of feeling trapped, we have denial, passivity, victimization, and lack of direction. And we also have the whole part of where the woman is holding her own hands over her eyes, choosing not to see what's going on around her or trying to find a solution. Whereas in this card, we have more of a imposition by somebody else. Somebody has tied her up, and this might cause the fear and confusion. Obviously, we have the magical thorns here that is suddenly attacking this woman, and I suppose that her blocking her sight is her fear response to these thorns. So in that sense, you can see it as the same thing, really. But in this description here, we get more of ignorance and confusion possibly imposed by others, and an encouraging advice to move forward one step at a time. To basically, even though you can't see clearly, your feet are free, so you can carefully guide your way through the swords and out of this predicament by carefully taking one step at a time and eventually you will be out of this mess. Whereas here, it feels more harsh. It feels like we see here, use your head to analyze the challenge and overcome it. But yeah, slight and subtle differences, but definitely a different approach and different ways of being able to read this card, in my opinion. All right, we are down to the last one, the Eight of Boons, or the Eight of Pentacles. So, in the Rider-Waite-Smith, we see this person sitting here hammering away at a pentacle, and we see here hanging 6 other pentacles, and on the ground we have a 7th pentacle, and the 8th one he's still working on. In the background we see some kind of castle again in the distance, suggesting that they've taken themselves, gone out here for solitude, for maybe for a possibility to concentrate on their work. Yeah, and the 8 of Pentacles is always, to me, a card of mastery, of honing your skills, of taking the time you need to, and repeating things over and over again until you are satisfied with your work, until you've mastered the skill, or to not grow stagnant. So let's look at the 8 of Boons. In this card we have a woman sitting on a log in the forest. She's alone except for this little bird who is building their nest here from the stray strands of wool that she is spinning here. And it looks like a magical yarn that thread that she is spinning. And she has here different skeins of yarn that she's spun already, and up here we have more yarn hanging, and down here we also have the, whatever you call it in English, maybe carding, the old-fashioned way of turning wool into long fibers so that you can spin them into a yarn. So yeah, I can definitely see how this can symbolize, mastering a skill. Spinning yarn is definitely not an easy thing to do unless you've had some practice. So let's read the guidebook. The task of magically spinning nettles into gold was daunting at first. Okay, they're nettles into gold. That's part of a old fairy tale as well. So that's really cool. So, the task of magically spinning nettles into gold was daunting at first. All stings and tangles, working against all sense to make something precious out of something so ordinary. Patiently moving at the speed of learning, she threaded her spindles, running the fibers through her sensitive fingers as she spun. In time, she would see the progress of her skill, a snarled and fussy spindle where a gleam of gold was faintly seen. She is intent upon her task, and her confidence grows with each filled spindle. It takes time to become an adept, and magical skills are no easier to master than mundane ones. Practice leads to improvement, but dedication leads to excellence. Whatever your work is in the world, do it to the very best of your ability, and then some. Push past your comfort zone. Do not lose sight of the moment in striving towards an outcome. The learning process itself brings its own delights. Meaning at a glance, mastering a craft, meticulous work, increasing excellence, passionate pursuits are their own reward. A closer look. The tiny bird is a gold crest. It is very happy to have golden threads to weave into its nest. So pretty. All right. And the last card description for today. 8 of Pentacles. The theme of work continues. Even more settled than in the 7, the figure here works on one pentacle after another, calm, dedicated. Notice they all appear slightly different. We can say he's learning, or that he's an artisan, not a machine. Does this imply that the new world will return to more individual work? In the 3, we saw a premature vision of groups working together in a spiritual setting. Here we see the practical steps to make vision a reality. It's the work that matters, not the result, or the money or recognition. Though we see a road leading to a city, no one is there, either to buy his pentacles or to admire them. The 8s all show progress. Wands bring energies together. The cups, in cups, people seek what is missing. Even the helpless 8 of Swords contains a hint of change. This 8 is the simplest, the most rooted and the clearest. Unlike the others, he does not need to leave to move towards the goal. Divinatory meanings: work, dedication, learning a skill. So we're back to having very similar descriptions in this last card of today. We do have some differences though. What was it that I just picked up on? It's gone out of my head. No, I was just going to point out the similarities here of them both talking about how it is the work itself and the process that matters, not the outcome of the process. And that we should take, that we should take pride and delight in the process of what we are creating or making. Yeah, pretty straightforward, I think. Honing a craft, learning a skill, and dedicating yourself to something, having a passion or pursuit something. Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward, and they both seem to be in agreement of the 8 of Boons and Pentacles. So that was it for today, guys. Thank you so much for joining me in this exploration of the Forest of Enchantment Tarot. The next episode will be episode 10, and we will be going through the last 2 cards of the minor arcana before we reach the court cards. So we're going to be looking at the 9s and 10s in the next episode. Please take care of yourselves and be well, my friends, and leave a comment down below if you have anything at all that you're pondering over from this day's session. Thank you, guys. Take care, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.